We got a short notice matchup here being put together on fight week as we have Basharat coming in at minus 625 going up against UFC newcomer John Garza, who comes in at plus 450. Now, if you guys remember, Basharat was scheduled to fight Ethan Ewing on this card. Unfortunately, Ewing forced out of the matchup, and in steps John Garza. At least Basharat gets to fight on this big McGregor card, which obviously brings a lot more eyeballs than it normally does, and I'm glad the UFC has managed to keep him on the card. Now, the 15-0 Brit here, Basharat, is going to be looking to build upon his split decision victory over Jean Matsumoto from back in February. That was a very close fight where it was actually Matsumoto that was able to land numerous takedowns to grind out some of those rounds and some of those minutes. But Basharat's slick striking approach allowed him to pick up the first two rounds there, outstriking Matsumoto, bloodying up Matsumoto a little bit as well. And that just further goes to show the well-roundedness of Basharat. You know, even though he has a 6-0 record in the UFC, this guy has shown many different wrinkles in his game. On the regional scene, I saw him utilize a slick striking approach. As he got into the UFC, we saw him utilize some very good grappling to smother his opponents and keep them in bad spots. But now he's been kind of flip-flopping in between, showcasing good striking and grappling against Chris Gutierrez, and then showcasing good striking against Jean Matsumoto. Now, a guy with that 6-0, you would expect the UFC to be pushing him a little bit more, right? 15-0 overall. But the issue is he is just struggling to go out there and get finishes. Since entering the UFC, he's only had one finish in his last 6 fights, and that was against Clayton Rodriguez, who he was able to submit in the first round of that matchup. But if you guys remember, Rodriguez was coming up a weight class because he was having so many issues trying to make the other weight class. I believe it was flyweight that he was struggling with. But Basharat's a very good fighter. He just needs to figure out how to toe the line of being entertaining while efficient so he doesn't get cut from the UFC like his brother Javid was just a few months back. Farad is a very solid prospect and a guy that could easily be a contender if the UFC pushes him that way. But it seems like they were giving him to a prospect killer in Ethan Ewing. I don't know how that fight would have went because obviously I didn't end up studying it. But that would have been a very dangerous fight for Farad. But the risk versus reward may not have paid off for him, especially with the record that he already has in the UFC. Now this weekend, he's going up against UFC newcomer and 23-year-old John Garza, who has primarily been competing under the Fury FC banner as a pro. He is now 6-1 as a pro, with his only pro loss coming in his second fight back in April of 2024, where he got knocked out in the second round of that fight. But now he's on a 5-fight winning streak, finishing 3 of those 5 fights by knockout, and showcasing that he's a very slick and tough striker to deal with. He throws good combinations, has some stinging power behind it as well, and he's been taking steady steps up in competition the entire time. I like what this kid brings to the table in terms of his striking, but his grappling still needs a little bit of improving. I believe his three amateur losses all came by submission, and that dates back to about 5 years ago. So he is working on it without a doubt. But you got to believe that as he gets into the UFC here, those most fighters are going to be looking to take advantage of him in that realm. Now, he seems to have some solid potential, but I have issues with fighters like him coming into the UFC too early and then suffering a few losses and finding themselves without a UFC job within 2 or 3 fights because they're just not experienced enough and they may not be ready for this step up in competition. Unfortunately, for Garza, that's exactly what he's taken this weekend against Farad Basharat. Basharat is a good enough striker to contend with Garza there and probably be the better striker as well. And then the grappling. We already know how good Basharat is there as well. Garza's best chance is to apply enough pressure to, obviously he's going to have to eat a few shots, but apply pressure, land his damage, don't settle for bad position when he gets taken down, and maybe his cardio edge could help him have some success in the third round. I just find it hard to believe that he's going to be able to overcome that type of experience disadvantage he's at here, especially taking this fight on short notice against a killer like Basharat. I got to go with Basharat here. I think Basharat wins by decision. I wouldn't count out a finish, but I'm going to go by decision as my official prediction. Minus 615 kind of makes sense here. It's going to have to be a Hail Mary shot from Garza or dragging Basharat into deep water and trying to drown him there. But I'd be very surprised if he's successful in doing so. So give me Basharat and Basharat by decision.